to the Westford School Committee meeting for Thursday, March 18th. As we all know, this is a special meeting tonight, and I can honestly say that I think everyone on your screen right now is feeling the weight of the matter before us and the decision that we'll be making this evening. But I'm also really excited about the possibilities that that decision brings. So with that acknowledgement and eye towards optimism in the future, we're going to have a discussion tonight. And first things first, we're going to do our typical housekeeping. Obviously, this meeting can be viewed on Zoom or through Westford Cat, either online streaming or your cable access television. Thank you to Westford Cat as always, and thank you to everyone who is joining us this evening. We're going to go through kind of the process of this because this is not a process that we go through frequently and certainly would not want to go through frequently. So we will be doing a few formal things this evening in terms of, opening a discussion or declaring number of votes because we're dotting all our I's and crossing all our T's. This is a matter of great weight. So we will follow those procedures. We will, the MASC advises us to declare the number of votes that is required for a decision to be made this evening. We will go through that process and then we will open discussion. Once we open discussion, it is important for the community to understand that this body of 7 people is prohibited by open meeting law from having the discussion we're about to have until this moment. This entire discussion takes place in public. So we are also keenly aware of the fact that we are discussing the qualifications and capabilities of 4 amazing and unique individuals. We will do that with as much respect as we possibly can, but this discussion does have to take place in public. We would also request that because of that the public also show respect to those candidates and understand that while we are discussing this in public, that most people don't have their job interviews discussed in public. And please be kind to one another and to our candidates and treat them all with the respect which they all absolutely deserve. So we're going to open the floor to discuss the discussion, and I'm going to ask everyone on the committee to really be honest and authentic and share where they are in their thinking and share what their thoughts are. And we may do 1 or more rounds of that discussion before the committee may start to reach a consensus or start to narrow and further that discussion along. At that point, when the committee feels we're ready to do so, we will be taking a straw poll. The straw poll is just that. It is, it's not an official vote at that point. It's a sense of, again, where we are as a committee. At that point, if it is appropriate, someone can put a motion on the floor to appoint a particular candidate, and we can then have additional discussion as needed. And then at that point, we would take a formal vote. The last interesting procedure, which I would like to acknowledge and I think is important, is that there is an option for the committee after an official vote has been taken to take a revote. And the purpose of that is we're all 7 individuals and we all may have individual opinions, obviously, about who should be the future leader of this district. But at the end of the night, this committee as a whole will be making a decision. So the option for the revote is so if it is a split decision, then the committee invites any dissenting votes to revote and join a vote for unanimity. and have a unanimous vote to demonstrate to the community and to the incoming future superintendent that this committee, while we have gone through this process with honesty and authenticity, that we also at the end of the night leave this meeting unanimous and in full support of the appointed candidate. So I think I've described it as best I can. I wanted to go through all of that to give everybody an idea of how this would go. At that point, actually a strange thing happens. I get a phone number and I go off screen and I make a phone call. Sometimes school committees will go into recess during that time. We've decided not to go into recess at that time. We're going to continue to stay live, and we're going to have a discussion, and we're going to thank the very many people who have participated and contributed to this process. I think that's important to do. We would normally do it at the beginning, but we're going to save that for later in the meeting, and we will issue all of those important thank yous at that time. Then I will be returning to the meeting, and hopefully with good news from our selected candidate. And then our committee will be voting into executive session. The purpose of that executive session is to discuss contract negotiations with the selected candidate. And that is the only portion that is permissible to do in executive session. So I think that covers all the process and procedures of how we're going to go about this tonight. But I would like to turn the floor over to Alicia. So you can maybe share with us kind of some perspective of where the road has brought us and how we got here. So that for anyone who might be tuning in for the first time or who may not have realized how long this process has been, that we can give them that full picture.
Sure, thank you. So this was an interesting process for me to actually go back and look at the search by the numbers, because the last 2 weeks have felt very fast and very jam-packed. But we started the search in the first week of September with public subcommittee meetings. We reviewed 4 firms, and then the full committee chose the MASC. We met through the fall to develop a survey of stakeholder groups. We then put out that survey, and we received 336 responses from parents, students, staff, our town partners, and the entire Westford community. From that, we created a leadership profile from what the community shared as their priorities for the future of Westford. We had 28 initial applicants. By the time we formed a preliminary screening committee, we had 27. We formed the preliminary screening committee with 14 stakeholders, and those stakeholders spanned the whole of Westford, including staff, parents, district leadership, municipal leaders, and members of the community. The preliminary screening committee then reviewed hundreds of pages of application packets and narrowed the pool down to 9 semifinalists. After 9 hours of interviews and a thorough discussion, the PSC chose unanimously to move these 4 finalists forward to the public interviews. Over the last 2 weeks, there were 23 site visits to the finalist districts and 32 meetings and interviews with our stakeholders, including, again, staff, parents, our town partners, and students. We had overall, over all of the public meetings, 547 overall viewers and 437 overall feedback responses. And all of that brings us to tonight's discussion.
Thank you. And with that full perspective, now I'll do the first official thing, and I will move without objection that we proceed to the discussion related to the superintendency and the appointment of a superintendent of schools. Seeing no objection, nobody's waving at me, we will proceed to that discussion. Our search consultant, the MASC, does advise us that it helps clarify matters for us and for the community to declare upfront that a certain number of affirmative votes is required for an appointment to be made. So again, without objection, I will declare as chair that the appointment of superintendent will require 4 affirmative votes cast for any candidate. So that would constitute a majority of the committee. It nullifies the impact of any abstentions. I wouldn't expect those this evening, but it does clarify and state up front for the record that 4 affirmative votes have to be cast for someone to be appointed. I will move that without objection, again, unless somebody starts waving at me or has a question about that. Okay, then we will proceed to the discussion. As I stated up front, I think it is important for us as a committee and we owe it to this process and to the candidates and to the community to be honest about where we are right now in our thinking and where this process has led us. So this is the discussion part, and we don't have to do this in any particular order. I will just take volunteers for who's ready to start with sharing their thoughts. And I'm looking at a square, but I don't know if the person knows I'm looking at their square. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Chris.
Okay, I'll go first. Okay, I hadn't planned on going first, but so
anybody's welcome to go first,
Yeah,
but no one
yeah.
was saying anything, so I picked a square at random.
Let's do it. So obviously this is a big moment, and the seriousness of it doesn't escape me. And I think I just want to say that I think we've been lucky to have a committee that's been really dedicated to this process, like really impressively, a chair and a co-chair who have been amazing throughout, the consultant and Dorothy Presser, who has really guided us and made it so much easier than it could have been. So I'm just really grateful for all of that, the commitment that everybody's shown. And we're lucky we have these finalists who are amazing and poured their all into this process, and just so much gratitude to them for all of that. And honestly, when I look at them, there's like something for everybody. There really is. Just an amazing group of finalists. Dr. Margaret Adams, I was struck by her humility and her lens for equity, her deep knowledge of teaching and learning. And I just think that all of that would be an asset to any district. Dr. Michelle Shannon, who brings this palpable energy and this unbelievable wealth of leadership experience to the process, and who's already shown a commitment to Westford Public Schools by volunteering at WA to help lead discussions about the mascot. So just fantastic. Dr. Christopher Chu, who on top of all the other things he brings, has this already proven deep understanding and concern for the district. And Dr. Matthew Jenger, who impressed me and I think all of us with his strong resume, his compelling interview, and just an incredible understanding of so many of the facets of being a strong educational leader. So where I'm left to start with is anybody who says, oh, it's obvious who you got to pick. It went through a different process than I did, because to me, it's overwhelming how difficult it is to say one of these is the one I'm going to choose. So I think any of the 4 could be very successful here in Westford. At the same time, I have no idea if any of the candidates will be successful. And I don't mean to be contradictory or wishy-washy, but it just highlights the daunting task that we're faced with, and like the critical discernment that it demands of us. So, and it also hints that a crystal ball of some sort would be helpful right now. But I want to touch on, so there's kind of 3 things I've been looking at, three facets of this, of the role and this decision for me. The first is experience and skill level. The second is vision. The third is leadership. And I'll try to be quick. Experience and skill set. None of these candidates have the experience of being a superintendent in a district comparable to Westford, none of them. So there is going to be some growth associated with any of their ascendancy to this role. And that growth could come in a number of flavors. It could be whether it's fiscal and budget matters. It could be having to work with a school committee, having sort of being that person where the buck stops at them. That's a growth that might be required. A growth in just getting to know the ins and outs of the district. So nobody's coming in with all of the experience and skill that's probably like ideal right off the bat. So we have to take into consideration what their growth areas are, factor in their capacity and their willingness to grow in those areas, but then also how those growth areas fit into the structures and the experience of what we already have in the district. So what do we already have in place that's strong, and how does that mesh? So that's one factor. Vision is the second one. We all want a leader who will take a positive direction to take Westford Public Schools where we think it should go. And we all may have different ideas of where that is, but for me, I heard all four candidates emphasize a lot of the growth areas that I personally hold dear. So I heard all of them talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I heard social emotional health of students and staff really like put on a pedestal. I heard, especially for me, restorative practices and restorative justice mentioned, I think, by every one of our finalists, which I really appreciate hearing that. I heard an embracing of varied means of learning. So things like project-based learning and using remote instruction at certain times after COVID. I heard talk of later school start times. So I really felt like vision-wise, we had across the board, we had that checked off. So the last piece for me is the leadership piece. And to me, this is like the intangible factor. And I've talked to some people this week about just about the process, not about the candidates, but the process, and saying, I feel like people are definitely looking at vision and that experience and skill set part, but there's like this gut feeling that people get. And I've been trying to like wrestle with that in myself. Like, what is that? And I think it is something about leadership. And it's maybe a gut feeling about a way of answering the question, is this a leader that students, families, and staff of Westford Public Schools will willingly follow? And I think for me, that's come down to be like probably my deciding factor in a lot of ways. But then I was still like, okay, what does it mean? What does leadership mean? And the word that kept popping up in my head was trust. I'm like, okay, there's something about trust there. And then interestingly enough, I was talking to my wife who attended a DEI training. Is that accurate? Okay, a DEI training today, just today. So I already had this trust notion wrestling in my head. And they had a talk by Frances Fry and Ann Morris from Harvard Business School. And it was about leadership and trust. And they have what's called the trust triangle. And the 3 points of the trust triangle are, and I'm saying this because I think it's really important, authenticity. So like I experienced the real you. What I'm getting, what I'm saying is what I'm getting. Empathy. So I believe you care about me and my success. And logic. I know you can do it, and your reasoning and judgment are sound. And then I think you said the logic was broken up. There's like competence and confidence, and the two elements of that logic piece. And you got to watch out when the confidence is higher than the competence, right? Did I get that right? Okay, great. And it really, I was like, yeah, that's sort of what, to me, those are the pieces of trust. So I was really happy to have this like solidified by research and these two people at Harvard Business School. So that, I guess, brought me to a point where, based on that, especially based on that leadership piece, because I really did feel like we had the other pieces like just covered all across the board. I felt like Dr. Shannon and Dr. Chu, and yeah, I'm going to use both of their, going against their wishes and using their last names and their titles, filled that for me, that leadership piece, in a way that I was looking for. You know, Michelle knocked my socks off last Friday, and I was excited about her excitement for potentially leading the district. She's so intelligent, so comes across as so caring. Her range of experiences make her eminently qualified to lead the district. It's clear she's earned the respect, the admiration of students and colleagues wherever she's gone. We talk about taking risks. We even had an interview question about taking risks. And she convinced me that she would not shy away from calculated risks, but that she also wants to come in and focus on listening, learning, and honoring all the strengths that we already have in the district. So I think she could come in and in little time forge strong relationships with the staff, the leadership team, the students, the families, and this committee. And Dr. Chu, there's just, again, there's so much good to say about him. He's clearly a great communicator, commands an audience, whether that's in person or over Zoom or in an email. Apparently, I keep hearing about his emails to families. His staff and his students and his colleagues could not have spoken more highly of the positive impact that his leadership has had at Stony Brook over the last, however, is it 6-7 years? I found a ton to like in our interview with him the other night, from his repeated focus on social and emotional health of students, to his description as a budget, which I think he said, I have it written down, budget's a policy document, a financial plan, an operational guide, and a communication tool. I liked how he broke that down. And lastly, when I look at the leadership trust triangle that I talked about, he's got it. He's authentic. He uses logic, obviously, in his decision making. And I've always found him to exhibit a lot of empathy in his interactions with both me, but with other people I've seen him interact with. I think I'm going to take a breath and get a sip of water and leave it at that for now, and pass the baton to somebody else, if that's okay.
Totally fair. Who's up next? Avery.
I'll jump in, as that's a hard act to follow. I will say right now, I thank everybody for coming forward. Much of what Chris had said, I would echo. I don't think we can go wrong in our decision tonight. The search committee, the search group did a phenomenal job bringing us 4 extremely qualified candidates, all offering different pieces to us. I actually spent time looking back at our invitation to a unique opportunity document that was put out when we called for candidates for this. And we had bulleted 7 items on that we were looking for in a leader. And we were looking for someone who could maintain and improve academic performance. We were looking for someone who valued diversity, equity, and inclusion, that was committed to social and emotional learning, that would direct a strong administrative team, that would recognize good teaching, that was excellent in communication, interpersonal skills, and able to work collaboratively. And finally, had the financial backing to be transparent in an open budget. So that really is taking a wide look at what we need in these candidates. For me, I started to think about the tone that each of them brought forward, the culture that they would bring, what kind of fit they would bring, and honestly, what kind of change I thought they could bring. Like Chris, I was thrilled to hear that the restorative and progressive discipline was mentioned for all of them, because I think that's an important piece. High academic standards, I think, was acknowledged by all. Social and emotional learning was definitely a factor for everybody bringing forward. Diversity, equity, and inclusion was brought forward. And I really wanted to look for a dynamic, energetic leader. And so I think when I look back at learning circles, and there was so much to take away, and I learned a lot during the process about having to look inward, looking to the committee, looking to what Westford needed. We've often asked what success looks like. We had one candidate who was defining failure as not a failure, but what we were learning. We had another who had thought partners, and I so appreciated that collaborative look. We had someone who created a faculty senate to make sure he was hearing from all constituencies. So, as Chris had said, this is such a challenging role. For me, it came down to communication, because I think that is at the heart of what the superintendent needs to be able to do. And for me, social and emotional learning is near and dear to my heart. So who is going to provide communication, transparency, interpersonal skills, and bring social and emotional learning to the forefront? And for me, I did come down to Dr. Shannon. Wow, what a dynamic, personable force to be reckoned with. I was so impressed. And Dr. Chu. Dr. Chu, my children went through that school. I got to know him. But really what I took from the interviews was what his colleagues said about him, and the trust, the communication, the support, the coaching that he lent to all of them at different times. And the fact that he isn't afraid to let academics come second to social and emotional learning. For me, that speaks volumes. So mine was a shorter summary, but I thank Chris for setting the stage, because you really laid it out beautifully, Chris. And I've set the stage for a great discussion. Thank you.
Alicia.
I honestly, Avery and Chris touched upon most of what I would have said. I think most people know that I come to the school committee by way of being a special education parent. So diversity, equity, and inclusion and social emotional learning are at the absolute top of my list of concerns for all of our students. What I have heard over the past 6 months as we started to survey the community and narrow things down are a lot of the same things Avery and Chris heard. And I'm sure you all as well. That what we're looking for here is both progress, but stability. So progress for progress's sake is not always effective. You want to make decisions, but you want to make them in a way that they stick. And for me, that's a lot of what I thought about as we were talking to all 4 of these candidates. I also know that our district really wants effective communication and transparency, and to be able to have a dialogue with the district and with the district leadership and with us, and to have us have a collaborative relationship with them and the district as well. When you think about a school district, you have your central office, your superintendent, your assistant superintendent, that staff. You have your school committee and our role with policy, budget, and goals. And then you have the parents. And we all in this one community need to be working effectively together. I'm not going to repeat a lot of what both Avery and Chris said, because honestly, it was everything I had on my list. Transparency, budget, talking about being open to meetings, being open to learn, growth mindsets, collaborative problem solving. For me, it came down to the same 2 candidates, Dr. Chu and Dr. Shannon. And they both bring things to the table that I feel Westford needs. And they both do it in a way that is authentic and dedicated and enthusiastic. And I do believe that with either of them, we are in very good hands. I'm going to leave it at that, at my top 2, and let the next person speak.
Ming Chen.
Sorry, trying to unmute. Yeah, so like Chris, Avery, and then Alicia. Really, first I want to actually congratulate on what finalist. It takes really a lot to actually put yourself out there, to allow us to visit your district and then to visit Westford. When talking about like picking the next superintendent of Westford, is before I actually know any of the 4 candidates or finalists, there is something you try to picture, say, what do you want superintendent to have? And then thanks for the preliminary search committee, it is fortunate that we have a very strong pool of excellent candidates. Although no one is going to be perfect, nobody is going to be perfect anyway. But trying to actually to listen and evaluate what's best fit for Westford, that's something really, really important for me. I think like Dr. Adams, Dr. Shannon, Dr. Chu, Dr. Jenga, they all actually spent a lot of time, and then every single one of them have achieved a lot. Dr. Adams, she has done a lot of work on curriculum and social emotional learning in barriers. What Dr. Shannon talking about her experience of going to college, then have to drop off. And that really actually resonates with me because that really talks to you about the quality public education, how important it is, and then it can change people's lives. Dr. Chu, as we know, he sent out the weekend updates, the Stony Brook version of weekend updates, which I have been enjoyed reading for the last 3 years. Dr. Django brings like a variety of experiences, not only in Massachusetts, but also in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Michigan. So really we're fortunate to actually have such broad variety of candidates in front of us. What I'm actually looking at the candidates, I'm looking into like a bunch of things. The first is the deep understanding of public education and then the first-hand experience in the classroom. So the social emotional learning, the academic, the diversity, equity and inclusion, those are all the things very important. The second quality I'm looking at is really the superintendent is a people person. The people skills is superintendent because you have to actually work with students, work with staff, work with school committee, work with the Westford community at large, and then work with municipal leaders. Really know how to actually manage the budget, to actually work with all the stakeholders. That probably is more important than the day-to-day operation of the school system, because he already has a team of staff work on the buildings, work on curriculums. The third quality which I'm looking into is the vision. Innovation brings change to the Westford school system, and then the relevance to the Westford school system. So really looking into that, I can say either we have an external candidate or internal candidate. Both could actually bring change. Yeah. And then I like Dr. Django's extensive experience as a classroom teacher, as a principal, the elementary school principal, as a high school principal, as a doctor and MBA, talking about like night school, edX, Coursera, and then also like all those new tools and the new things which are envisioned during the pandemic, how to actually bring them forward. And then to be able to lead a $300 million high school building project to deal with all sorts of factors in the town of Arlington with 75% of approval. I don't know how he does that. That's really like impressive. Dr. Chu, as we said, like the weekend updates, I definitely enjoy. The karaoke, the car karaoke or the beach karaoke he did every single year at Stony Brook, I really enjoyed because every year, like when the school opens, I was actually going and say, hey, where is the link? I'm trying to actually watch the video. Clearly, he brings a lot of change in a Stony Brook school, the PBL, the trauma sensitive. So so I think Dr. Chu and Dr. Janger, these two candidates, they are actually my top two choices. But on the other hand, an interview is a process. We're trying to make it as transparent, as engaging as possible, and as thorough as possible. We as committee members are making decisions with the information we have. We're dealing with whatever we have. So this is my current position, but I would like to actually hear the other committee members. I know that sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't, but we're just trying to be as thorough as possible.
Sean.
Yeah, this was really difficult, right? Let me see if I can speak to a few issues. I think my thinking might be more narrowed than everyone else's, but I'll get to that. I thought each candidate was tremendous. They were all kind of titans in their field, and they all brought something different to the table. Dr. Adams is this master of the realm of curriculum and development. She had a really strong background in elementary education, which I loved. Dr. Shannon struck me as someone who was brilliant in motivating people, training them, and retaining quality staff. That was a big common theme through her discussions with us. And then, of course, her implementing DEI initiatives was a big part of her work too. That was impressive. Dr. Chu is this academic who is great at communicating and making complex educational topics, something that, I can wrap my small brain around. Dr. Janger is this well-rounded intellectual who had a long history of, problem solving and managing this giant school with large cohorts of students and teachers. So they all kind of bring something different to the table. And when I started thinking about this, any one of them could really bring our district into a brilliant future. In my eyes, I tried to narrow it down to one, and I'll explain that. I went back and I looked at what our core values are as a district, particularly what I viewed as the core values being. Avery listed the 7 or 8 of them that we listed in the profile. I mean, that really hits everything. But the ones that struck me were high academic achievement, social and emotional needs of our students, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then retaining and training excellent staff, right? Because the administration's only as good as our staff. In my eyes, without these 4 things, Westford's not Westford, right? There are some areas that we are more lacking in, but I think generally these 4 principles have served us well in the past 10 years. So I think whoever takes on this role really has to hit those 4 marks, right? I think the budget and things like that will kind of fall into place as they hire their chief financial person. In my eyes, the spine or thread that keeps Westford operating so well and exemplifying those 4 principles that I identified is stability in leadership. Bill Olson was our school leader, 15 years. Superintendent Chris Foley, 1982 to 2001. I had to look that one up. And before that, Superintendent Blanchard was here for 25 years. That's a lot of time across those 3 individuals. I think that Westford has succeeded because we've been good at putting the right people in the right places and giving them reason to stay. I think the superintendents who I've identified understood that they had to put children first, and anyone who's going to be successful is going to put children first, right? And they're going to produce the best results possible, and ideally, hopefully, continue this tradition of making Westford this destination of a place to raise a child, because I really do think that that's where we are right now. To me, the candidate who exemplified that mentality, that child first mentality, in making our district the best version of itself, was Dr. Christopher Chu. I think that Chris just gets Westford. He understands, I think, that our town is thirsty for progress, but in many ways kind of values its traditions. And I think that Chris is really just an educator at heart. And that's what I found so interesting about him. Again, you've all touched on the weekly newsletters, the engaging videos that he posts, and his ability to communicate in a group. I also don't think that he's a top-down leader. I don't think that we need that right now. I think that he recognizes that a school district is only as good as its individual buildings. During the forums, right, he spoke to working out of each school from time to time. I mean, he said that. I can't remember if he said it during the student forums or not, but he said that he wanted to spend part of his weeks working out of each individual school. You know, I just thought that was great, you know, so he could get that in the field perspective. And Chris spoke time and time again how he can just take his laptop and go. I was also, I didn't notice this, but Gloria pointed it out, so please correct me, Gloria, if I'm mischaracterizing this, but Chris included a member of our custodial staff in our site visits to him. And to speak to Chris's management style, I do think that this really, really speaks well to Chris valuing each and every individual member of our schools and how important they are at providing the best education possible for our students. And what, at least what I learned from the past few months, particularly with the 4-tier bus conversation, was that I think our community wants a sense of like stability and consistency next year. I really believe that they want a product that's close to what we're already producing, right? Because I think Westford does do a lot of things that are great. And I think that Chris's knowledge of the inner workings of the town and our community will allow him to be effective in that role. I just want to point to, I know you guys read some of the comments from the students, but this one struck me. It said, Dr. Chu would provide a level of familiarity and consistency coming out of this crazy year that I think the district could benefit from. Additionally, I appreciated his desire for students first and foremost to feel safe, both emotionally and physically. I think that his idea that the students will be able to access learning better if they feel accepted and happy is a good model for how an ideal school should run. So again, that was one of our amazing students' comments. Now, I know the first criticism of what I've just articulated will be that the internal candidate is safe, right? And that an internal candidate by virtue may not be able to institute true change because they've kind of been engrossed in it. I think at least with Chris, I disagree with that. And I think that he would admit first that our system really does need to change in a lot of ways, right? I think that we need to keep advancing in areas of social emotional learning, diversity, equity, inclusion. I sat through all of the student forums, and that's really what the students kept talking about. You know, no one, occasionally some issues about homework and stuff, but clearly that lends itself to the SEL. But I think that they understood that a global, diverse, and inclusive education makes them better students, but also better citizens. And I think that Chris can advance us in those realms. And I think that's evidenced by, you know, his implementation of the project-based learning program at Stony Brook. Regarding whoever takes on this role really has to have a good relationship with our teachers and staff. As I discussed earlier, I think it's one of the 4 main things that we have to do is just maintain good, excellent teachers and staff. Our staff are the reason why our children keep turning out great. You know, they put in tremendous hours, everything. But I noticed a quote, particularly from one of the staff members that spoke to Dr. Chu, and this one hit home for me. It said that he had a good pulse on our school's needs. I really like that he wants to build more of a community between cultures in our district, and his main goal is to have happy students who feel they belong. For so long, we've focused on test scores, and social emotional well-being has gone by the wayside. I think that Dr. Chu is a champion for this, to find ways to continue to keep Westford a high-performing district, but will keep important focus on getting our students to a more comfortable place as a member of our school community. The other aspect to this, which Avery and Chris and Alicia and Ming Chen touched on, is that in my eyes, communication has to be paramount on this, right? We do have a $62 million budget, but most of it's fixed costs. But I think that Chris has the communication skills to help lessen the impact of any reductions or programmatic shifts that we might have, which you all know have been difficult over the past few years and may happen again in the future. Another thing that's telling regarding his communication skills was that the leadership team that I think the vast majority of us sat in on kept saying time and time again, when Chris speaks, people listen. And again, our leadership team are generally, they're all type A people. The vast majority of them have doctorates. And for them to say that, I think is really telling. You know, I do think that all of our candidates are great and would be excellent at the role. However, at least in my mind, Chris is where I'm narrowing my focus.
Valerie, me or you? You want to arm wrestle? I can go next if you want.
I'll go.
Okay.
I don't even know where to start, but my thoughts probably aren't as eloquent, or they feel a little disjointed, but once I kind of landed on a direction, it really just started to piece together and flow. And I just wanted to start by reiterating that, like everyone else has, that we have 4 very strong candidates, and we would be lucky to have any of these 4. I think throughout the process, about each candidate at various points from either their stakeholders or the site visits, we heard a version of, you know, this individual is the smartest person we know. So I think we have a really great group to draw on. And when I sat down to think about tonight, it was most helpful for me to focus my remarks on a single candidate. But I am fully prepared to support whatever candidate we arrive at in this discussion. And I'm excited about a future with any of them. As I reflect on my first year on the committee, one thing that I have heard as an undercurrent to some community discussions is like a comparison. Oh, well, look what they're doing over there. How can we do that? And this moment feels like one of those chances where we can say what we want Westford to be. With that in mind, and looking at these qualified individuals and looking for something to click, I think Chris called it the intangibles. For me, that was Dr. Michelle Shannon. When Dr. Shannon described applying for this position as once in a lifetime for her, giving her the opportunity to bring all of her experiences of seeing what has worked in other districts and bringing it back to Westford, and her desire to give back, I just felt something click there. Some things that struck me about Dr. Shannon, you know, she inspirational, genuine, sincere, a lot of heart and passion, humility. I think when people, especially young people, look for leadership, what resonates is that authenticity. You need to believe in who your leader is. And what better way to do that than with someone referred to as a thought partner. There was a theme throughout what we learned of Dr. Shannon of activating people and inspiring people. And that was from, you know, colleagues and direct reports and stakeholders that have known her for a long time. But I even saw that come out in the feedback forms after people had, you know, just met her for the hour interview or the meet and greet. One comment from an administration stakeholder group said, "I simply can't imagine a better person to help WPS grow into a better version of itself." There's also, it's clear from anyone who watched her speak, a theme of excitement and energy. And I thought one quote from the site visits that summed it up was, "It's hard not to get excited about something that Dr. Shannon is excited about." I think she has an educator lens, a social work lens. She struck me as a genuine listener. I think she's ready to look in the budget for efficiencies. I think she's ready to evaluate trade-offs and have hard conversations. And frankly, I don't have hesitations about whether she is ready for Westford. I think the question is whether we are ready for her. My gut says she is the change agent that we need.
Okay, one of the challenges of speaking last in this group is that, you know, all my good material's been stolen. I, you know, followed a similar path to what some others here did, and went back and went to an invitation to a unique opportunity, our initial job posting, and looked at what the profile we built through this process and what we put out to the universe and said, this is what we're looking for in a leader. I'm also a huge sci-fi nerd. So I tried to then take back from all of these details and descriptions of qualities that we were looking for in a candidate. And then I tried to do the thought experiment of, okay, let me envision the alternate timelines where we hire each one of these individuals. And what does Westford look like as a community 6 months, 16 months, 6 years from now, you know? And somewhat frustratingly and reassuringly, I came to the conclusion that we would be in good hands with any one of these candidates, any of the four. And Westford has such a strong foundation to build upon, that I think any one of these four candidates would continue to build on that foundation and to move Westford in a positive direction. I will say now, as I described at the beginning of this meeting, I would gladly support a unanimous motion for any one of these four people when we get to that point. And I would give any one of them my full support. Dr. Adams absolutely spoke very passionately about teaching and learning and all of the important initiatives that I think she has brought to Melrose, many of which parallel our journey here in Westford. So I think she is someone who has already been on a similar journey in a parallel district. I believe Dr. Jenger has a very interesting background. I liked his self-described education nerdness, and his data-driven decision making, and the all of the interesting work that he's done, not just in social, emotional, and diversity learning, but when he was describing the building that they were, that for their new high school, and the thought that went into that. And he's told a story about having a 1 foot gap between rails for the intended purpose of allowing the physics class to be able to drop items from great heights, that the stairwell was specifically designed for that educational purpose. I thought just the thought and care that went into that was really impressive. Dr. Chu, without a doubt, has been a leader among leaders. I think we heard that. He, and I've seen this in both public meetings and in and behind the scenes meetings, where Dr. Chu has truly stepped up, I feel like, during the pandemic, and has expanded his knowledge of the district as a whole. And throughout the reopening and with the COVID advisory committee, has really become a leader beyond his building. He's also done some really innovative and amazing things within his building. And I think, you know, we've heard a number of those already discussed, from PBL, the Bar We group, other really good initiatives where I think Dr. Chu is always looking to make the experience of students better and to find new and stronger ways to support his staff. You know, one staff member described just the amount of support that he has provided, especially during this time and during this pandemic, which means so much. He clearly also has, you know, a home field advantage, but I did not feel that Dr. Chu is the type of leader that would, I guess, rest on that home field advantage. I think while he had that, he also came in as a candidate knowing that he had to also establish what his qualities would look like and what he would look like as a superintendent to us. And I felt that shift. So for me, I thought Dr. Chu was an incredibly strong candidate. I will leave the remainder of my remarks for who, and I'm being as honest and authentic and transparent as I can at this stage, who I did think was the strongest of the 4 candidates, and that was Dr. Michelle Shannon. I think that Dr. Shannon brings a unique opportunity, not for her, but for us as a district. I had the pleasure of doing Dr. Shannon's reference checks, and I think that gave me an interesting perspective on her background and range of career. I've had some really fascinating conversations with people across the country, and I'll be honest, I went into those reference checks somewhat skeptical, thinking I don't fully understand some of the roles she's played. I didn't know what a chief of schools in Boston did. I didn't know what an educational consultant did. So through doing those reference checks, I got a perspective on her background that I thought, when I did my thought experiment of imagining that alternate timeline, led to some really interesting places for Westford. Dr. Shannon has a national perspective in her work as an educational consultant. She has worked with leaders in all districts around the country. Her educational consulting group works in 37 states. They talked about working with districts large and small, rural, urban, suburban, ran the gamut. And her role in that situation is to go into districts, assess situations, and provide coaching and support for the leaders of those districts. So she is a coach and a builder of leaders. I think that's something we heard repeatedly throughout our discussions with people about Dr. Shannon, that she builds capacity in others, that she's not a hierarchical leader, she's not a top-down leader. She looks at others and what their strengths and their interests are, and she encourages them to seize that and build on that. And that creates a better experience for the staff that works with her, and creates a better experience for everyone around her. One volunteer in particular one woman in particular told a story of how she started out as a volunteer, a parent volunteer, then was so inspired by Dr. Shannon, became an employee of the school, and then with Dr. Shannon's encouragement, went back, pursued additional education, and is now serving as an assistant principal in a school, and had a total career shift inspired by Dr. Shannon. And that's a unique skill and quality. Some of the other stories I was honored to hear were about that parent, that volunteer to assistant principal, had gotten to know Dr. Shannon through the school that Dr. Shannon developed in Queens, New York. And I, at first, didn't really understand, what that meant. How do you just make a new school? And I learned more about it, and it is apparently a quite grueling process to establish a new school in New York City. And it is a public school. There is a detailed process. It involves, all of the, as you can imagine, the bureaucracy that's involved, and all of the financial aspects that are involved. Many schools in that category may form, but they also have to find a way to be financially sustainable. And I think what was evident about the school that Dr. Shannon had established and built, she referred to it in some of her talks as her baby, that it was made sustainable not only from an educational perspective for the students who gained an excellent education there, but where staff were trained and developed. She told some specific stories about how staff was developed and supported, and how the school itself was financially supported and made sustainable over the long term. And I thought that was very compelling, having gone through that experience and being able to create something on that scale. So I do feel like Dr. Shannon would be a change agent. And it's funny that Valerie used that term. I had that written down here too. But I think sometimes change can be viewed as both positive and negative. And I think Dr. Shannon would be the positive kind of change, because again, I'm going to go back to one of the stories she herself told, was one particular position that was not a good fit for her, was a position that she described as a school who wanted her to come in and make dramatic, fast changes, and wanted her to dictate from top down how things needed to change. And she just said that that's not how I work. That's not how I operate, and really made it very clear that she is someone who seeks to understand and build relationships before embarking on any kind of change. So I think the whole perspective from the unique experiences that she's had in education, with creating that school, with her experiences in Boston, other experiences nationally, to take all of that and bring it to our district, and to be able to look at our district, which has such a strong foundation, and look at it with a fresh lens and inspire and build the capacity of the leaders and the wonderful educators that we know that we have within our district, and that this is such a rich skill set that she brings in this area. I think that takes Westford to the next level. And I think that Dr. Shannon could shepherd this district forward in a way that both respects the traditions and moves Westford forward to a community that is educating our students to do whatever they want beyond Westford. And whether that is going out to anywhere in the world and being comfortable in that global perspective, or whether that is returning back to Westford to share their talents within our own community, as we know sometimes our alumni do. So I think, and oddly enough, one of the things that helped it click for me was when we asked the funny question of what's a book or a movie that you liked or enjoyed, and she spoke passionately about the live Hamilton production, and she spoke about how it did great honor to the tradition and the history, while also envisioning what an inclusive history could look like. And the fact that she had both perspectives, that clicked for me. So while I could also give a passionate speech for some of our other candidates, I felt like I had to follow where my heart was leading, and because I had that experience of being able to walk through her career and see it through the eyes of others, I wanted to be able to share that for the committee's consideration. So that concludes round one of discussions. I'm going to now open the floor back up for a second round and give everybody a chance to speak a second time. As I said up front to the community, this is the first time the 7 of us have been able to have this discussion around the virtual table here. And I want to give everybody a chance to react and reflect on what you heard from other members of the committee.
I keep waiting for somebody else's microphone mute symbol to go away, but it didn't.
I was gonna pick on it. I was gonna pick on Avery this time if you didn't go, but I flipped a coin last time, and I did think it was funny that even though I didn't say we had to go in order, we went in our natural order, and I saw that happen. So up to you guys. You and Avery can arm wrestle, I guess.
We have a natural order.
Yeah, I was like, what natural?
What is it?
We did when I do the votes. I always do votes in like the same order.
Age
I'm
order.
always first.
Yeah, I do it in seniority order, but yeah, this time I picked on you first.
You know, I do the same when I email you guys something. I do the same, but I don't do seniority. I do chair, co-chair, vice chair, and then I do seniority after that. I don't know if you guys ever noticed that, but I do.
Okay, we're torturing the community at this point. We apologize.
agreed.
Apparently,
Agreed.
the weight of this, we all needed the tension break. So please, I hope that this is an authentic demonstration of that we ourselves needed the tension break. So thank you for
Do
enduring.
you want to go this time?
I'm happy to go this time.
That'd be good.
Okay.
I'd love to hear what you have to say.
So I appreciate everybody having a different way of going about this, about tackling it from their own. As I said before, I think we all had to look inward to figure out what path was, what was speaking to us, what was drawing us to a candidate. And so I appreciate everyone sort of taking us on their journey and how they reached where they are. I had reached, Dr. Shannon had wowed me with her energy and charismatic presentation. But I have to say, and I don't remember who said it, so I apologize. Stability is still ringing in my head. We have had a very traumatic year with the pandemic. And I am worried about how Westford will respond to change after a traumatic event of the pandemic. I think we are being thrust back into the classroom. For some, that's great. For others, it's terrifying. And so I think that's where I guess I lean a little towards Dr. Chu in that calmness, that stability. He really, I don't know, I watched during the pandemic, watched the leadership struggle with learning models and where we were going to go. And we broke into social and emotional group, a teaching and learning group, and an operations group. And I know Dr. Chu was in that teaching and learning group, and really organically grew to a leader among leaders. And I remember asking along the way, is he being appointed this? What is going on? And they said, no, it's just sort of happening, that he is taking the lead and being so critical of every model and looking at it from every direction and providing feedback in a constructive way that led us to a model that many still say was one of the best created because it allowed the kids to touch base with the teacher every day. And I know he had a lot to do with that. So that was really when everybody's going through it, it's that stability and that trauma and the calmness and just sort of where he's grown. And I'm not afraid of change because I think Dr. Chu can provide huge changes. But I think that we need to tread lightly on how quickly we're changing in coming out of this. But I'm so excited to hear what kind of changes we can look at. I know he in particular had said that full day kindergarten, that is one that has been on all of our lists. And he said, that doesn't happen overnight. That's going to take planning. It's going to take strategy. It's going to take budget. Same thing with start times. He was loud and clear that scientifically it was better with that model that was presented with the flip. But that's not going to happen overnight. We need to plan for that and set expectations for that. So I appreciated his vision. I so appreciate his creativity and his humor. I don't think many of us think of happy and joyful as words around education. But if we don't have happy and joyful staff, we are not going to have happy and joyful kids. And we want happy and joyful kids, because it's not always about the grade. It's about who they are. They need to find who they are. They need to thrive in this setting. And that setting needs to be happy and joyful and creative and kind, and looking for somebody who is going to think out of the box. I think both candidates that I had mentioned will think out of the box. But it's that calm, kind, creative spirit that Dr. Chu has that's still drawing me there. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, thanks, Avery. That was helpful. So I gave like my preamble before and the triangle, and I think, you know, with Dr. Shannon, Dr. Chu, like I said, it satisfies like so much of that for me. So that's phenomenal, and you know, happily will support either of them in this role when the time comes. But I kind of feel like, so I think of our role, school committee, is to be stewards of the Westford Public Schools, right? And we take that seriously. And for me, once I got past some of those core metrics that I'm looking at candidates with, there's this equation of risk versus reward. Okay, because I know there's a lot that's solid and that I can rely on and can say, I know they're gonna, as far as we can tell, check the boxes I need and then some. But there's unknown also. You can't predict the future. So it's that risk and reward equation for me, and I gotta balance that. And we're all gonna like put the fulcrum of that balance in a different place. But for me, like on the reward side, the upside for both candidates is extremely high. So I know there's going to be lots of good no matter what. They're going to take both step into the role, or whoever it is, step in the role, take us in exciting directions. I'm convinced of it. But I also think there's a tendency to think of the reward side of the risk reward as something different, right? Like change. And so I've been wrestling with that a lot too. What does that mean? And I think somebody else talked about change for change's sake, but I think it's not just about change, it's about change what needs to be changed, but also keep what needs to be kept. And so I think that's how I look at change, is finding the right things to change. So that's sort of, I have the reward side of that equation. So then I look at the risk side. And I have to say the risk is the unknown. And for me, I can say this, I've gotten to observe Chris Chu for 6 years. I've seen his passion for project-based learning. I've seen his like unabiding commitment to social emotional learning and health. I've seen his creativity and his like joyful spirit, how he's engaged with the Stony Brook community. And not just the Stony Brook community, I think, it's crossed over into other schools. I think we've heard that. We've heard that from other leaders in the district. I will say 2 years ago, as part of Challenge Success, the parents involved in Challenge Success, we put together a storytelling event called Success Stories. And the idea was we want people who have, lived a little life. So these are adults who've maybe taken a non-traditional path through education or career, but landed somewhere that they could look at and say, this is right for me. And look, you don't have to take that straight and narrow path. There's lots of different paths. And here's my story. And so we had, I forget, maybe 6 storytellers. It was amazing to hear their stories, very different. But when we were planning that, we were like, we need somebody to moderate this, somebody who can do the job, can moderate an event, but can also sort of exemplify the spirit of that event, of honoring different types of success. And Dr. Chu that's who we went to. We knew that was the person to do it. And he was brilliant at it. And he could have just introduced the people and let them go, but he brought almost a TV host sensibility to it, where he was able to very deftly synthesize their stories and follow up with thoughtful questions and engage the audience and the storytellers. And again, he just did it in that way that exuded confidence, but also calm. Anyway, that's the kind of thing I've gotten to observe. And so for me, I know his commitment to Westford Public Schools because I've observed it for my 2 terms. And I look at his familiarity with the district, a plus. He's familiar with the buildings, the staff, the leadership, the students. You know, and I think we heard that from the students. You know, we heard that from the parents we talked to, how they view him. And we heard it from the leadership team. We heard a strong endorsement in our meeting with the leadership team. And I take that really seriously. I think that, you know, I was looking to that as an important moment to kind of get another piece of data to inform this decision. And that really mattered to me. He knows what works around here. I think he knows what doesn't work. I really do. I think he's the one, you know, he's the leader in the district that I've looked to repeatedly to know where we want to go and be willing to talk about pushing it. You know, I think he's been out in front of the district on things and has pushed the district, and I have full confidence that he'll continue to do that if he were in this role. So I think it really uniquely positions him to be able to come in without missing a beat. And that's not the most important. The most important thing isn't that the next year we get through the next year. It's important. It's been a tough year. It's important that we get through the next year. But I also think long term, I think he's here for the long haul. I think he's sort of all in, and will continue to have that drive and commitment to making the district better. Thanks.
Alicia.
So just in case anyone at home thought any of us were taking this at all lightly, this is, you know, we've been each individually on our own islands working through this for weeks now, for months really. And I'm going to say, you both quoted me because I was the one who said progress but stability. And I was also the one who said, you don't want change just for change's sake. I'm going to say in the last, I would say 24 hours, I have leaned more towards Dr. Chu. And here's why. I don't think he's a compromise. I think in this candidate, I'm seeing pieces of a puzzle that I'm trying to put together for Westford. I want someone who people trust. I want someone who can build relationships. But I also want someone who's not afraid of taking risks. And I've worked with Dr. Chu on the DEI committee for the last couple of years. I have a child in his school. I have a child with special needs in his school. I know his commitment to his absolute core to DEI and social, emotional, and equity. He tells the students that their safety comes first, not just their physical safety, but their mental safety as well. He talks about them being about what Chris was talking about earlier about it's not always about the academics. The academics will come. If you are not in a place where you feel safe, where you feel heard, where you feel respected, you are not going to be an effective learner. And he says that about his staff too. And I think Chris made a really excellent point in that when we're talking about Westford, we're talking about a cross section of stakeholder groups. We're talking about students, we're talking about staff, we're talking about how the budget fits together, we're talking about policies, we're talking about interpersonal relationships. And to hear what our staff and our leadership had to say, I won't go back over what Chris said, but a lot of the taking initiative in this past year. For me, I feel like at the end of the day, I want to have my cake and eat it too. And I need to make a holistic decision for the whole of Westford Public Schools. And for me, right now, I think I'm going to lean Dr. Chu as well.
Ming Chen.
Yeah. So hearing everybody talking about like Dr. Chu. Obviously, I know Dr. Chu very well because my kid goes to Stony Brook School. I can clearly say what changes he has been doing at Stony Brook School. You can clearly see the kids, the social emotional learning, the PBL, the all the good stuff, which I think you guys were mentioned. And then I totally agree that we really want the next superintendent to be here long term, and then to actually to be really successful for the sake of all our kids. I totally agree that Dr. Chu can actually be such a candidate. Thank you.
We can take additional comments. We can also go out of order here. I'm not seeing anybody waving at me. I'm happy to go next if you want. Valerie.
Sure. I mean, I'll reiterate that I see exciting future with either of the 4 candidates, and certainly with Dr. Chu. You know, by choosing to speak my first round on Dr. Shannon doesn't negate the strength of the other 3 candidates. And I think Dr. Chu brings a lot to the table. You know, the strong relationships with our leadership team can't be overstated, right? They're like the gem, they're like the core of our district. And to kind of give them a way what they need to succeed, I think is really powerful. And that institutional knowledge, knowing our challenges to be able to hit the ground running is certainly a strength. I still have a gut preference for Dr. Shannon. Vote for support of the majority candidate.
I think I can see that the conversation is starting to gel. I will add that I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I think there are multiple right answers. Our district has a really strong foundation, and I am confident that either of the leaders, you know, that we've discussed here, Dr. Shannon or Dr. Chu, will be good stewards of this district and will first and foremost, you know, protect what we have and build upon that foundation to transparently and honestly look at the strengths of this district and also look at the areas where there are growth opportunities. And I think they would both do that. I also gave my first round candidate comments to Dr. Shannon because that's where I saw a unique opportunity. But that doesn't mean it's the only opportunity. And I fully acknowledge the strengths that Dr. Chu would also bring to this position. And I would happily support his candidacy as well. Sean.
I think I'm the only one who didn't go this round. And I really wanted to hear from the folks who were between 2 or 3 candidates, because I think that's helpful for my thinking. I, like many of you, it's so tough. And I know I spent my time speaking to Dr. Chu's accolades and the like. Dr. Shannon was this tremendous dynamic leader, and just real quick, her ability to get to the heart of the problem with the mascot is just tremendous. And the fact that she spent time volunteering that when for WA, you know, I mean, I think it really shows her commitment to Westford. And irrespective of the outcome of this, I really do hope that she does continue to benefit our community. Again, Dr. Chu, though, for me, it was about stability, and I won't spend time reiterating everything that's been said, because I think that we've touched on a lot of those topics. So my vote remains the same.
I know I described a process at the beginning that involved a straw poll at this stage, but I feel like we just did that. I'll open the floor. Would someone like to put a motion on the table? Avery?
I move that the next superintendent of Westford Public Schools be Dr. Christopher Chu.
Second.
Procedurally,
Yep, did I do it wrong?
that's okay. I think procedurally, we just need a friendly amendment here. Alicia?
I was just looking for the wording.
Okay, I
Do you
was
have
trying to get it close.
Sorry.
You have the wording, Alicia? I have it if you don't.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I would amend it to be a motion that Dr. Christopher Chu be appointed Superintendent of Schools for Westford, subject to the successful negotiation of a contract of employment mutually agreeable to the candidate and to the school committee and signed by both parties or their designees.
And I'll second as amended.
Okay, thank you for the motion and the amendments and the necessary seconds. Any further discussion before we vote? Then I think the vote, as our typical order is, goes to seniority, and that would be Avery.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Ming Chen.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Valerie.
Aye.
And I would also aye. That is a unanimous vote. Dr. Chu has our unanimous support. Now we go to the brief interlude of our meeting. We will not be going into official recess. I will be passing the virtual gavel to Alicia, and she's going to be doing some thank yous while I make a phone call. I want to do a little bit of my own thank yous because I'm going to miss all the thank you fun, and say thank you to everybody on this screen. I challenged all of you to come with your authentic thoughts and your authentic selves and to just lay it on the line so everyone could see that process, and I think everyone did that, and I appreciate that. I also want to thank Alicia, because she's not going to thank herself, for leading the search process with just such skill and grace and organization. And I am just forever grateful that you took upon this very daunting task this year. I would also like to thank Superintendent Olson. For those who don't know, each one of our candidates started their day with meeting Bill Olson and having the opportunity for Bill to speak to them about what a special place Westford is. And I just want to thank him. I did speak to him earlier this evening, and he wished us well on this decision tonight. And I really just want to thank him for his grace and professionalism throughout this entire process, and for his leadership throughout a very, very difficult year. I don't think this is this is the type of year that anyone envisions as the year that is their final year in education, and he's done so quite bravely. So thank you to Superintendent Olson as well. I'm going to go off camera now because apparently I have a phone call to make.
So at that point, I will take over while Gloria does the behind the scenes. First, we want to thank the applicants. We have appreciated you making yourselves available to us and our stakeholders. And if we were hiring more than one superintendent, our decision this evening would have been so much easier. You are all phenomenal candidates and amazing people, and we wish you all the best. To our incredible central office team who helped arrange emails and meetings and provided us with invaluable feedback. Superintendent Olson, Dr. Cleary, Director Moran, Ingrid Nilsson, and especially Sandra Abramo and Nina Mangan, without whom nothing in this district would ever get done. Thank you to the entire leadership team, our principals, our curriculum coordinators, our guidance, our nurses, our special education professionals, our teachers, our paraprofessionals, and all of our staff who filled out surveys and attended site visits and shared their thoughts with us. You were all so very open and honest about both the strength and resilience of the Westford Public Schools and the challenges we face in the coming years. Thank you to our townside partners who, with the help of Jody Ross and Andrea Perraner-Sweet, shared their thoughts on collaboration between the district and the town, and then met with the finalists and shared their impressions as well. Thank you to our parents and community members who were so honest with us about their perspectives and experiences and their hopes for the future of the Westford Public Schools. And especially from me, a huge thank you to the special education community and their extraordinary participation right from the very beginning. And thank you to our students who have participated as well, because you are at the absolute heart of every decision we make. So having your voices be part of this process was essential. Thank you to the preliminary screening committee, Dr. Cleary and Principal Antonelli, staff members Noelle Coulter, Amy Bailey, and Stephanie Goslin, parents Danielle Thompson, David Hill, and Anjali Rajput, select board member Tom Clay, community member at large Ellen Hardy, and recent alum Ariella Fleischer. You helped us narrow down the field of applicants to 9 semifinalists and 4 finalists, and your hours of work and the thoughtfulness you put into it were exemplary. A very special thanks to Westford Cat for broadcasting all of our interviews and forums. Cat has been an essential partner to us through the years in keeping the public informed, but especially so during the pandemic. And on that note, a huge shout out to our student journalists at the Ghostwriter, who wrote an in-depth series on all 4 candidates and helped to keep our community informed as to their backgrounds and their vision. All 4 finalists shared how impressed they were with the top-notch journalism of our ghostwriter staff. You were phenomenal. Thank you to the professionals at MASC, especially Dorothy Presser, who was our field rep for this. Your support and guidance has made this process thorough and efficient, and we totally know you'll miss all the late night and weekend emails full of questions from us. And finally, I want to thank my fellow committee members. Never has there been a more tumultuous year to be a public servant, but you all spent countless hours reading hundreds upon hundreds of pages of feedback and applications, interviewing finalists and making reference checks, and putting your all into trying to make the best decision possible for the Westford Public Schools. And I know you all will bring the same level of focus and collaboration to transitioning to the new leadership, and that you will support Dr. Chu as they assume the superintendency. And if anyone else has anything to add, by all means.
I'd like to thank you. I know Gloria did, but I really think we owe you a round of applause for spearheading and steering this through the process. It was no easy task at all. It was monumental. And I know it required you to take a lot of time away from your family. And just want to say thank you and how much we appreciate you leading us through this. I know Dorothy was right with you. And that was great to have that support. But really, you took this on and you took it on wholeheartedly. And so thank you. Not to diminish Sean and others on the search, but I know Alicia really took this on completely. So thank you. Round of applause. I would play my little hedgehog, but I don't think anyone would appreciate it.
Well, thank you. So now we sit here in slightly awkward silence while we wait to see if our choice actually accepts.
Well, I can play the hedgehog if you'd like.
I don't think we want to subject the public to that.
No, I don't think so.
We can't get a jump start on Monday's business? I'm just kidding.
Sure, you want to make a motion?
That's not on the agenda.
That is true. That is very true.
If you can pivot from this to budget that quickly, I applaud you.
Chris, pull up the PowerPoint.
I was gonna say, does anybody else feel like you can breathe again? I'm trying to catch my breath and take the weight off.
So Avery, do you want to need mediation or mediation or whatever you call it?
Oh,
We can actually all like take a deep breath for like 2 minutes.
wait, I have that. There's an app for that. But I don't have it on my phone.
You remember that in the one of the WA classroom when we visited the classroom, that was like wonderful. It's like when the
That was
class
amazing.
starts, the first 2 minutes, the teacher is actually taking all the kids and like start doing like mediation to actually get your mind settled before actually starting the class. That's great.
That was fantastic. I'd like to make a motion that we start all of our meetings that way. That was an amazing tour of WA, frankly, to see. I mean, we hear from our staff all the time, but to be able to actually go into the building and see how they are absolutely making things work in the most insane circumstances. They're magicians, the lot of them.
Mhm. Is the phone line broken today?
Remind people that next week there are pre-K to 5 conferences.
Mm-hmm.
So to remember the calendar impact on that, is it an early? No, it's a no day and something. I don't have the calendar in front of me.
Oh, I don't either.
But to make sure everybody checks your calendar for pre-K to 5.
No school Monday, 2-hour delay. Or actually, I don't know how that translates this year.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we don't
I forget
have
from
Monday.
November.
Yeah,
Early
that's a good
release
question.
Tuesday.
So since we're here, do we want to talk about, well, not scheduling, but I guess, so we're on for Monday and then there's a joint board meeting on Thursday, correct?
Correct. Don't forget the NEASC meeting as well, though.
Yeah, and then there's a following meeting on the 29th.
Yes, because this upcoming Monday would have been our budget meeting, and then the meeting on the 29th is the regular business meeting.
Okay.
Just in case you guys didn't have enough meetings with us over the past,
The
2
public
weeks.
knows, it looks like the next, next 3 weeks, we have school committee meetings every Monday.
Yeah.
Okay.
What else is going on? Oh, the League of Women Voter Youth event is tomorrow night. Reminder for that for folks. Westford Academy football at Acton Boxborough, Saturday at 5:30. I'm just looking at my calendar at things. We have a dentist appointment. Oh wait, you guys don't care about that. What else is there?
Can anybody hear this? No.
No, it's just us, right?
For just a minute, let's ask the question. How often do we ponder the depth of the present moment?
All right, we're putting Avery in charge of that for all the upcoming meetings.
How often do we really feel what's happening within and around us? Allowing ourselves to be moved, to be inspired, to be filled with gratitude for the mystery.
Oh, Gloria's back.
Oh,
Right?
all right. We're right in the middle of mediation.
What did I miss?
Well, we're trying to do the WA teacher thing.
Start with the
That sounds very healthy. So Dr. Chu commends everyone for their ability to improvise. We just had probably the most 2020, I guess it's 2021 experience ever of I called Dr. Chu and he couldn't hear me now. So then we had to find an alternate path. So we have now connected, and absolutely, Dr. Chu accepts enthusiastically, and he wants to thank everyone for the process and the discussion that has gone on tonight. As surreal as I think it was for him to see his future debated in a public forum, he really appreciated everyone's comments tonight and the process that we went through. And he's very enthusiastic to start in this new role. And now I think we're done. And oh wait, I guess we still have to vote into exec, because now we have to deal with the nitty-gritty paperwork part of this. But I know I got to miss all the fun improvising and thank yous, but I do want to circle back to the positive of thanking everybody. I know this was a really long process, but a really important process. And I'm glad we went through it together as a committee, as a community, and I'm really excited about the future. So let's now take that final motion, and Alicia, I think that's to you.
Can
I'm
I say
pulling-
one thing?
Oh,
Sure.
sure.
While Lisa's pulling it
Yeah.
up, and it's probably redundant. I think we've probably done this, but I just feel like I need to thank our candidates one more time, like not just for what they brought to this process, but for what they do in their communities day in and day out, and what they've done for years and what they're going to continue to do. Like, it's inspiring to me. I'm moved by all of them, and honestly by just this process, but just like heaps and heaps of gratitude for them for being the leaders, the phenomenal leaders that they are.
Well, and I think whether those leaders remain in the communities where they are, or move on to superintendent roles in other communities, those communities will be very lucky as well as ours. I feel like we were lucky for getting to know these candidates, and they've made us better too. So wholeheartedly agreed. Any other final comments? Didn't want to cut that off before we do the motion. Okay, Alicia.
Motion to adjourn to executive session in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position. The committee will not return to public session.
Second.
And all in favor, Avery,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Alicia,
Aye.
Ming Chen,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Valerie.
Aye.
Aye, that would be unanimous. Thank you to everyone who joined us this evening and who joined us throughout this entire process. The committee will not return to public session. Thank you very much. Be safe and be well.
Good night.